In the cacophony of this world, where voices clamor for attention and the noise of ambition drowns out the whispers of the soul, there lies a profound truth. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, but the presence of understanding. In the stillness, one finds clarity. In the quiet, the heart speaks truths that the mind often overlooks. Consider the life of the man who seeks to conquer the world with his words, who believes that success is measured by the volume of his voice and the multitude of his followers. He speaks incessantly, his tongue a sword that cuts through relationships, his words a shield that guards his insecurities. Yet, in his relentless pursuit of recognition, he loses sight of the very essence of life, connection. Then there is the man who understands the power of silence. He speaks not to be heard, but to be understood. His words are few, but they are weighted with wisdom. He listens more than he speaks, for he knows that in listening he learns, in silence he grows. This man does not need to shout to be noticed. His presence is felt in the quiet moments, in the pauses between words, in the unspoken understanding that passes between souls. He does not seek validation from the world, for he has found his worth in the stillness of his own heart. But silence is not merely the absence of noise, it is the presence of peace. It is the ability to be content in one's own company, to find joy in solitude, to seek fulfillment not in external accolades, but in internal harmony. In silence, one confronts the self, faces the fears, the doubts, the insecurities, and finds strength not in avoiding them, but in embracing them. The world may tell you that to succeed, you must be loud, you must be seen, you must be heard. It may tell you that your value is determined by your visibility, your popularity, your influence. But the truth is, success is not measured by how many people know your name, but by how well you know yourself. In the quiet moments, you discover your true desires, your true passions, your true purpose. You realize that the pursuit of external achievements is hollow if it is not aligned with internal fulfillment. You understand that the accolades of the world are fleeting, but the peace found in silence is enduring. So, embrace the silence. Seek moments of stillness, not as an escape from the world, but as a journey into the depths of your own soul. In those moments, you will find clarity, you will find purpose, you will find yourself, and in finding yourself, you will find everything you need. The world may continue to shout, may continue to clamor for attention, may continue to chase after fleeting desires. But you, in your silence, will possess the peace that surpasses understanding, the wisdom that comes from within, the strength that comes from knowing who you are. In the end, it is not the loudest voice that leaves the greatest impact, but the quietest soul that lives with the deepest purpose. So be silent, and you will find everything you need in your life. True strength lies not in speaking constantly or loudly, but in the discipline of quietness. Silence reveals inner fortitude, self-control, and wisdom that loudness often hides. In silence, you confront your inner self, your fears, doubts, and desires. It's in those quiet moments that you begin to understand who you truly are and what your life is meant to be. Modern culture equates visibility with value and noise with success. But real fulfillment comes not from external applause, but from inward peace and clarity, found only in silence. A life lived with quiet conviction and inner clarity often has more lasting influence than one driven by the pursuit of fame, attention, or constant speaking. The deepest truths and richest treasures are discovered and shared in silence. The idea that silence is weakness is one of the most dangerous lies our generation has come to believe. We are taught from early on that to be heard is to be strong, that to raise your voice is to show courage, that to dominate a conversation is to lead. And yet, when we open our eyes, when we look at the world through the lens of truth and humility, we discover something altogether different. We find that the strongest people in this life are not always the ones shouting on the stages, not the ones who win every argument or command every room. Sometimes the strongest people are the quietest ones, the ones who know when to speak and when not to, the ones who are not threatened by silence but embrace it because they understand its power. There is a kind of courage that the world does not celebrate. It is not glamorous, it is not loud, it does not trend. It is the kind of courage that allows a person to remain silent when falsely accused, the courage to hold your peace when everyone else is defending themselves, justifying their actions, making their voice heard to gain sympathy or support. It takes strength to be quiet in those moments, not cowardice, not weakness, but strength rooted in conviction and confidence, because the person who knows the truth does not need to always fight to prove it. The person who walks in integrity does not panic when their name is smeared, because they understand that truth has a voice of its own, and it will speak in due time. There is a kind of power that does not need a platform. It does not need a microphone, a spotlight, or a following. It simply is, it abides, it remains. This power is not found in asserting oneself over others, but in restraining oneself. The man or woman who can bridle their tongue, who can sit in the tension of a moment without reacting impulsively, that person is not weak. That person is in control, and control is power. You cannot control the world. You cannot control people, but you can control yourself, and that, in many ways, is the highest form of strength. When everyone is talking, and you choose to be quiet, it doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It often means you have something so valuable, it's not meant to be thrown around casually. When you understand the weight of your words, you do not waste them. When you know your worth, you do not feel the need to announce it constantly. Silence becomes not just the absence of speech, but the presence of wisdom. Silence is not passive, it is active. It is not retreat, it is strategy. And sometimes the wisest thing you can do in the face of chaos is to simply be still. There is a kind of authority that comes with silence. Think of the one who listens more than they speak. That person holds power because in listening they are learning. In holding back, they are observing. In not interrupting, they are understanding, and understanding gives rise to insight. Insight leads to discernment, and discernment, when exercised with humility, leads to leadership that is not performative but transformative. The loudest person in the room may demand attention, but the quietest person often commands respect. But the reason most people fear silence is because silence exposes them to themselves. In the silence, there is no one to impress. There is no noise to distract you from your own insecurities. There is no applause to drown out your doubts. In silence, you are left with your own thoughts, your own conscience, your own questions. And for many, that is a terrifying thing. Because deep down, they know that their loudness is a cover for their brokenness. Their constant talking is a way of avoiding the real issues within. So they keep the music loud, the conversation shallow, the laughter constant, not because they are happy, but because they are afraid of what the silence might reveal. And yet, those who are truly strong are not afraid of that silence. They walk into it, they sit in it, they let it do its work in them. They allow the silence to purify their motives, to challenge their assumptions, to reveal their weaknesses and call them to grow. They do not run from silence. They embrace it as a sacred teacher. And through that silence, they emerge stronger, clearer, more focused, not because they have more to say, but because they have learned when and how to say it. We live in a culture that glorifies expression, but undervalues reflection. We are told to speak our truth, to share our thoughts, to voice our opinions, and yes, there is a time for that. There is a time to speak. But if we are always speaking and never listening, if we are always asserting and never examining, then our words become shallow. They lose their power. True expression must be born out of reflection, and reflection happens in silence. There is a quiet dignity in a person who is not moved by the need for attention. Someone who can walk into a room and not announce themselves. Someone who can sit in a circle and not have to be the center of it. That person has already won a war that many are still fighting, the war of needing to be seen. When you no longer need to be the loudest voice, the most followed figure, the most praised performer, when you can be silent and still content, you are free, you are powerful, because the world no longer owns you. You must understand, silence is not inactivity. It is not resignation. It is preparation. The tree that grows strong roots does so in the dark, underground, unseen by the world. The strength is being developed in hidden places. And when the storm comes, it is not the flashy, fragile branches that hold the tree upright. It is the depth of its roots. That depth was cultivated in silence. That strength was forged in obscurity, and so it is with you. You want to be strong, learn to be silent. You want to be effective, learn to wait. You want to be wise, learn to listen. There is a time to speak and a time to remain silent. Wisdom is knowing the difference. But the ability to remain silent when speaking would be easier, when defending yourself would make you look good, when arguing would give you the last word, when retaliating would feel justified. That ability is what separates the strong from the weak. The weak are ruled by their impulses. The strong are ruled by their principles. The weak need to win every moment. The strong are willing to lose some battles to win the war. And that war is not with others. It's with yourself, your pride, your ego, your desire to be right, your fear of being misunderstood. That's the real battlefield, and silence, real silence, is a weapon in that war. It cuts through arrogance. It exposes motives, it refines the soul, and in the end, it doesn't just change how you speak, it changes who you are. Do not mistake silence for absence. Do not confuse stillness with passivity. The one who waits in silence may be more prepared than the one who acts in haste. The one who listens first may lead better than the one who speaks first. The one who seeks wisdom in the quiet will speak with authority when the time comes. Because when the time does come to speak, to act, to move, those who have mastered silence will speak with depth, act with purpose, and move with clarity. Strength is not always loud. In fact, the strongest things in creation are often the quietest. The mountain does not shout, but it stands unmoved. The ocean does not boast, but it carves through stone. The sun does not demand attention, yet it gives life to everything. So too, your strength need not be loud to be real. Let your silence be your strength. Let your stillness be your testimony. Let your life speak, even when your mouth is closed. For the truth does not need to shout to be true, and power does not need to perform to be powerful. In the world we live in today, everything is moving, fast, loud, demanding. Noise has become our comfort zone. We surround ourselves with music, with conversation, with distractions, with devices that keep our minds busy and our hearts numb. We are constantly connected to the outside, and yet we are deeply disconnected from ourselves. We scroll endlessly, speak carelessly, fill our schedules until there is not a moment left to be still. And in doing so, we avoid the one thing that is most necessary for real growth, for real understanding, for real purpose, stillness, Stillness is not inactivity. It is not laziness. It is not idleness. Stillness is a discipline, a posture of the soul, a deliberate and courageous step into quiet where we stop running, we stop pretending, we stop performing. It's the place where the masks come off, where the noise dies down, and where what is real can finally speak. And make no mistake, what speaks in stillness is not always comfortable, because stillness has a way of stripping away everything we hide behind. It reveals the parts of us we've been ignoring, it confronts the lies we've believed, and it begins the painful but necessary process of self-discovery. You can go your whole life talking, moving, chasing, achieving, and never actually meet yourself. You can build a name, a brand, a platform, a legacy, and never truly know who you are underneath it all. Because knowing yourself doesn't come from what you do, what others say about you, or what you accomplish. It comes from what you're willing to face in the silence. That's where the real work begins. That's where the real journey starts. There's a kind of fear that rises in stillness. The fear that if I stop moving, I'll lose momentum. If I stop talking, I'll lose influence. If I stop producing, I'll lose value. But those fears are rooted in a lie that your worth is tied to your activity, that your identity is tied to your productivity. Stillness exposes that lie. It forces you to ask questions that success often drowns out. Who am I really when no one is watching? What do I believe about myself when I'm not being praised or criticized? What is driving me really, love or fear, purpose or pressure? These are not easy questions. They are not answered in a day, and that's why stillness is essential, because self-discovery is not a moment. It's a process. It's a long, slow, sometimes painful unraveling of all the things you thought you were, so that you can finally see who you actually are. And you cannot microwave that process. You cannot cheat it. You cannot speed it up by reading another book or attending another seminar or quoting another guru. It happens in silence, in solitude, in the space where you learn to be honest with yourself. There are things about you that you cannot discover while you're surrounded by applause. Because applause, while encouraging, can be deceiving. It can convince you that the version of you the crowd loves is the real you. And you begin to perform for that approval. You begin to shape your identity around what gets the most affirmation. But in stillness, there is no applause. In stillness, there is no crowd. It's just you, the real you, and that's when you find out whether you are who people think you are, or whether you've just been pretending all along. Stillness is where pretense dies. It is where the filters come off. It is where your soul can finally breathe, and where your spirit can finally speak. You begin to hear things you've never heard before. You begin to notice the motives behind your actions, the wounds behind your reactions, the desires behind your decisions. You begin to see patterns that were invisible in the chaos. You start to trace the roots of your struggles back to their origin, and once you see them, really see them, you can begin to heal, you can begin to change. Not on the surface, but deep down where it really matters. This is why people avoid stillness, because it's not romantic. It's not glamorous, it's hard, it's uncomfortable. But it is the only place where transformation can take root. In the noise, you might change your habits, but in the silence, your heart is changed. And that's what self-discovery is about. Not tweaking your behavior to fit an image, but uncovering the truth about yourself and becoming the person you were created to be. Stillness does not just reveal your weaknesses, it reveals your strengths. It reminds you of what matters. It brings to light the dreams you buried because life got too busy. It reconnects you to your convictions, the things that make you weep, the things that stir your soul, the things that give you life. In the stillness you remember. You remember who you were before fear told you to play small. You remember what it felt like to be alive, not just busy. You remember that your value was never in what you could produce, but in who you are. Some of the most powerful moments of clarity you will ever experience will come when the world is silent and you are alone with your thoughts. Some of the most defining decisions you will ever make will not be made in the boardroom or in the spotlight, but in the quiet of your own heart, where you finally have the space to hear what really matters. In stillness, distractions fall away and your spirit can finally speak, and often, what it says will surprise you. You may discover that what you've been chasing for years was never what you truly wanted. You may find that the dreams you once held no longer align with the person you've become. You may realize that the things you feared losing are the very things that have been holding you back. And in that moment, you are faced with a choice: continue pretending or start becoming. But becoming is hard. Becoming means letting go of what you thought you needed. Becoming means saying no to things that once defined you. Becoming means choosing integrity over image, truth over popularity, depth over display. And you will not have the strength to make those choices unless you have spent time in the stillness, unless you have allowed yourself to be stripped of all the noise so that what remains is real. There is a sacredness to stillness, a holiness because it is often in the quiet that we are most open to what is eternal. In the noise, we chase what is urgent. In the silence, we remember what is important, and what is important is not always seen by others. It is not always celebrated, but it is what gives your life substance. It is what anchors you when the storms come. It is what defines you when everything else is stripped away. Self-discovery in stillness is not about finding perfection. It's about finding truth. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. That person may have been buried under years of performance, pain, pressure, but they are still there, waiting to be seen, waiting to be heard, waiting for you to be still long enough to remember. And once you begin to see yourself clearly, everything changes. Your relationships change, because you no longer relate from a place of neediness, but from a place of wholeness. Your work changes, because you no longer strive for validation, but work from a place of purpose. Your decisions change, because they are no longer driven by fear, but by conviction. Your pace changes, because you realize that hurry is not the same as progress, movement is not the same as growth, and success is not the same as significance. Stillness teaches you to live from the inside out, not the outside in. It reorients your soul, it grounds you, it humbles you, and it strengthens you, not with the strength that comes from public applause, but with the strength that comes from private honesty. That strength cannot be faked. It cannot be bought. It is forged in the quiet places where no one is watching. You do not discover yourself in the spotlight. You discover yourself in the shadows, in the quiet mornings, in the sleepless nights, in the moments when you are tempted to run, but instead you sit, you stay, you listen, and slowly, over time, you begin to hear the voice you'd been drowning out all along, the voice of truth, the voice of purpose, the voice that does not flatter but frees. And once you've heard that voice, everything else fades. So if you are searching for meaning, for clarity, for identity, for peace, stop searching outward and start searching inward. Find a quiet place, turn off the noise, be still, and listen, because everything you're looking for out there begins with what you're willing to face in here, in the stillness, in the silence, in the presence of your own soul. That is where self-discovery begins, and that is where your true life starts to take shape. There is a voice that calls to you every day. It speaks through the glow of your screen, the flood of your inbox, the scroll of your feed, and the clamor of the culture. It tells you what to buy, who to be, how to speak, and what to want. It is the voice of the world, and it is loud, so loud that you can hardly hear yourself think. And yet the tragedy is not that the world is loud. The tragedy is that we have stopped noticing. We've grown accustomed to the noise. We've welcomed it in, made it our companion, allowed it to sit in the driver's seat of our lives. And all the while, something precious is being drowned out, the quiet pursuit of true fulfillment. Noise is not just sound, it is distraction, it is deception, it is that constant hum of expectations and comparisons, that nagging pull toward productivity and performance, that insistence that you are not enough unless you do more, say more, show more. And while your calendar fills and your accomplishments stack and your name gains recognition, your soul shrinks in silence. You may gain followers and lose your way. You may impress strangers and forget who you are. Because when you live in constant noise, you begin to mistake movement for meaning and applause for peace. The world is always selling something, always offering another solution to your emptiness, another path to happiness, another shortcut to significance. And it all sounds so promising: buy this, try this, become this, chase this, but none of it lasts, because all of it depends on your ability to keep up, keep performing, keep pretending, keep polishing your image. Keep achieving, but fulfillment is not found in any of those places, not truly. Fulfillment cannot be manufactured or marketed. It is not loud. It is not showy. It is not found in the spotlight. It is quiet. And you have to turn down the volume of the world to even begin to hear it. But that is precisely the problem. We are afraid of quiet. We fear what the silence will say about us, because in silence there are no filters. In silence there is no validation. In silence there is no one to perform for, and for many that is terrifying, because so much of what we do is rooted in performance. We say what we think will gain approval. We do what we think will earn us a place. We become who we think will be accepted, and all of that can feel like success, until the applause stops, until the crowd moves on, until the noise fades and you're left with the emptiness you never dealt with. Noise gives the illusion of life, but it is not life. You can be busy and hollow. You can be admired and lost. You can be surrounded and still lonely. The world will not tell you this. It will not tell you that the very thing it's using to lure you is the thing that's keeping you from true fulfillment. It will not tell you that the more you chase after everything it promises, the further you'll drift from what really matters. It will not tell you that every time you give in to the noise, you are sacrificing something sacred. Your ability to be still, to be real, to be whole. We are taught to chase success, but whose definition of success are we using? The world defines success as influence, affluence, visibility, and so we spend our lives pursuing platforms, wealth, attention. But how many people have all of that and still go to bed miserable, still wake up hollow, still wonder what the point of it all is? That's because fulfillment is not found in things. It is found in being aligned with who you truly are and what you were truly created to do. That kind of fulfillment doesn't come through the world's noise. It comes through listening to something deeper, something eternal, something that the world cannot give and cannot take away. The noise is clever. It disguises itself as opportunity. It promises progress. It masquerades as urgency, and if you are not careful, you will spend your whole life responding to the world's noise and never answering the call of your own soul. You will be so consumed with what others expect of you that you never stop to ask what's actually right for you. You will be so caught up in doing more, having more, being more, that you forget to simply be. And in that forgetting, you lose the very thing you were searching for all along. There is a moment that comes to every honest heart. A moment when the excitement fades, when the noise no longer satisfies, when the crowd no longer validates. And in that moment, you are faced with the truth. The world's noise can keep you entertained, but it cannot give you purpose. It can fill your time, but it cannot fill your soul. It can offer pleasure, but it cannot offer peace. And if you want more than just noise, if you want meaning, if you want depth, if you want real life, you have to be willing to step away from the noise and into the stillness. Stillness is not escape, it is not laziness, it is the courage to pause long enough to ask hard questions. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I hoping to find in all of this? Who am I becoming in the process? These are questions that noise won't let you ask, because noise thrives on speed and surface. Stillness demands depth and truth. And if you dare to answer those questions honestly, you might realize that much of your life has been spent climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. But the beauty of that realization is that it's not too late to climb down. It's not too late to reset, to reorient, to reimagine what fulfillment really means. It's not too late to unplug from the noise and plug into truth. Because the truth has been there all along, waiting for you to be quiet long enough to hear it, waiting for you to stop pretending long enough to receive it, waiting for you to lay down the pressure and pick up peace. The people who find true fulfillment in this life are not the ones who have everything, but the ones who have clarity. They know who they are. They know what they value. They know what they're living for. And they did not find that clarity in the crowd. They found it in the quiet. They found it in the moments when they turned off the world and tuned in to something greater, something purer, something that could not be bought or sold or liked or shared, something that speaks not to the image but to the soul. You will never find fulfillment if you're always chasing what someone else says you should want. You will never be at peace if your life is dictated by the volume of the culture. There has to come a point where you stop, where you listen, where you decide that the inner voice of truth matters more than the outer noise of approval. And when you do, when you finally stop bowing to the noise, you begin to live. Really live, not for applause, not for performance, not for perception, but for purpose. Fulfillment is found when your life aligns with your soul, when what you do flows from who you are, when your external actions are rooted in internal conviction. And that kind of alignment can only happen in the absence of noise, because noise pulls you in 1,000 directions. Stillness brings you back to center. Noise distracts you with what doesn't matter. Stillness reminds you of what does. Noise is urgent. Stillness is eternal. You will not accidentally stumble upon fulfillment. It is not handed to you by the world. It is discovered by the one who dares to be still, to be honest, to be quiet long enough to truly listen. The one who turns down the volume of the culture and tunes into the quiet of the heart. The one who chooses depth over display, meaning over marketing, integrity over image. And once you taste that kind of fulfillment, the noise loses its power. You no longer feel the need to keep up with everyone else. You no longer crave the spotlight. You no longer measure your worth by metrics. You walk at a different pace. You speak with a different tone. You live with a different kind of peace, because you found what the noise could never give you: truth, purpose, joy, real, lasting, grounded, eternal joy. So if the world's noise has left you exhausted, empty, and anxious, don't despair. You're not broken, you're not failing, you're just ready to begin the journey that noise cannot lead you on, ready to walk a quieter path, ready to trade distraction for direction, ready to find out who you really are, and why you're really here. That journey begins with one brave step: silence. not because silence is easy, but because silence is where fulfillment begins. There's a strange irony in the way our culture views greatness. We think the loudest voice wins. We think impact comes from influence and influence from visibility. So we chase platforms, audiences, followers, attention, believing that if enough people are looking, something must be meaningful. But that's not how impact works. Not real impact, not the kind that lasts. The truth, though inconvenient, is simple. Lasting impact does not come from the noise we make, but from the substance we carry. And that substance is born in the quiet places of the soul, in the hidden rooms where purpose is forged, not in front of others, but before God and within ourselves. There are people who are famous and forgettable, and there are people you'll never hear about who are shaping lives, shifting legacies, and leaving marks on eternity that the world will never measure. Because real impact isn't about recognition, it's about transformation. And transformation doesn't require a stage, it requires a life lived with depth, with truth, with quiet conviction. You don't need to be known by many to influence deeply. You need to be known by truth, known by love, known by purpose, and that kind of life is cultivated in silence. A quiet soul is not a passive soul. It is not timid or weak or uncertain. It is steady. It is grounded. It is unmoved by trends and untangled from pride. It doesn't react to every demand, nor does it chase every opportunity. It chooses intentionally. It speaks carefully. It walks slowly, not because it lacks direction, but because it knows exactly where it's going. A quiet soul is not a distracted soul. It is focused, disciplined, settled, and it knows that noise fades, but purpose lasts. There's something unshakable about a person who doesn't need to be seen to keep going. Something unstoppable about a soul so aligned with its purpose that it doesn't break under pressure or shrink under scrutiny. That person knows who they are, and that knowledge doesn't come from applause. It comes from the secret place, from the time spent away from the spotlight, away from the approval, away from the endless race of comparison. They've come to know something deeper, something stronger, and it shows, not in volume but in substance, not in popularity but in presence. We think of legacy as something built on achievements, but the deepest legacies are built on faithfulness, on a consistent life lived in alignment with truth. Think of the ones who shaped you most. The ones who challenged you, who loved you well, who walked with you through valleys. Were they loud or were they present? Were they constantly performing for the world? Or were they quietly investing, faithfully showing up, humbly giving what they had without fanfare? Those are the ones who leave marks that don't wash away, not because of what they said loudly, but because of how they lived quietly and deeply. Impact is not about momentary influence. It's about long-term fruit. And fruit doesn't grow in noise. It grows in silence, in patience, in obscurity. The roots go down long before the fruit comes up. The process is hidden, and those who understand that are not in a hurry to be seen. They are in a posture of preparation, because they know that what is shallow may grow quickly, but it cannot endure. What is deep may take time, but it cannot be shaken. Depth is not glamorous, but it is essential. People who live for depth are not seduced by noise. They're not swayed by what's trending. They don't chase every opportunity because they understand that not every door is meant to be walked through. Not every invitation is wise to accept. They ask better questions. Not will this make me known, but will this make me faithful? Not will this increase my platform, but will this deepen my purpose? And because they ask better questions, they live better lives. Not perfect, but purposeful, not loud, but lasting. A soul with deep purpose doesn't seek to be impressive. It seeks to be obedient. It isn't shaped by public opinion, but by personal conviction, and it knows that the cost of depth is high. You don't get there by accident. You get there through surrender, through sacrifice, through seasons of being hidden, being misunderstood, being overlooked. But instead of resenting those seasons, that kind of soul embraces them. Because it knows that the greatest work often happens in the dark. The seed does not complain about being buried. It dies to itself quietly, and only then does it grow. That's the path of deep impact. You must die to the need to be seen, die to the need to be praised, die to the illusion that louder is better. Only then can something real take root. Only then can your life begin to carry weight, not the weight of pressure, but the weight of truth. Not the burden of performance, but the blessing of purpose, and it is purpose that sustains you when everything else falls away.